Kaya woke up when the ground started shaking under her feet. She opened her eyes and saw dark clouds covering the sky. The wind was getting stronger and stronger. She could smell rain coming. She looked around for Joba. He was sleeping next to the big rock where their small group always spent the night. There were 12 people in their group. They were all family. Kaya's mother was there. Joba's brother was there too. They all lived together and moved together looking for food. "Joba," Kaya said quietly. She touched his shoulder. "Wake up. Something is wrong." Joba opened his eyes fast. He was always ready when danger came. That is why Kaya liked him. He was strong and smart. He kept her safe. "What is it?" Joba asked. He sat up and looked around. "Look at the sky," Kaya said, "and feel the ground." The ground was still shaking a little. The clouds were getting darker. Thunder made loud noises far away. All the animals were running. Birds flew away fast. Even the big animals that usually stayed calm were moving. Joba stood up. "We need to wake everyone. This storm will be bad." But before he could wake the others, the rain started. It was not normal rain. It came down like a waterfall. The drops were big and hit hard. In just a few minutes, everything was wet. Kaya's mother woke up. "What is happening?" she asked. "Big storm," Joba said. "We need to find better place to hide." The group started moving. They grabbed their few things. Kaya had her digging stick. Joba had his sharp stone. Everyone had something to help them find food or stay safe. They walked toward higher ground. The rain kept falling harder and harder. The small stream near their sleeping place was getting bigger. Water was coming from everywhere. Kaya held Joba's hand as they walked. The ground was getting muddy and slippery. It was hard to see where they were going. The rain was so heavy that it hurt their eyes. "Stay together," Joba's brother called out. He was leading the group. "Do not get lost," but the water was rising fast. Too fast. The small stream became a big river. Then it became something even bigger and scarier. Kaya heard a sound like thunder that would not stop. She looked back and saw something that made her heart beat fast with fear. A wall of water was coming toward them. It was taller than the trees. It was moving faster than any animal could run. "Run!" she screamed. Everyone started running. But the water was faster. Kaya felt Joba's hand slip from hers as the water hit them. The force was so strong that she could not stand up. The water picked her up and carried her away like she weighed nothing. She went under the water. Everything was dark and cold. She could not breathe. She moved her arms and legs to try to get to the surface. When her head came up, she took a big breath and looked around. "Joba!" she called out. "Joba, where are you?" The water was carrying her fast. She could see trees and rocks going by. She tried to grab onto things, but everything was moving too fast. The water was too strong. Then she saw him. Joba was in the water too, about 20 steps away from her. He was holding on to a big piece of wood. He was trying to swim toward her, but the water kept pushing him in different directions. "Kaya," he called back. "Try to grab something." Kaya saw a tree branch floating near her. She reached out and grabbed it. The wood was wet and slippery, but she held on tight. The branch helped her float better. For a long time, the water carried them both. Kaya could not tell how long. The sun was hidden behind clouds, so she could not tell what time it was. Her arms hurt from holding onto the branch. She was cold and scared. Sometimes Joba was close enough that she could see his face. Sometimes the water took him far away and she could not see him at all. Every time she lost sight of him, she thought she might never see him again. The water started moving slower after a while. Kaya could see the sides of the river now. There were trees and rocks that were not moving. She was still in the water, but it was not as wild and scary as before. "Joba," she called out again. "Here," he answered. He was closer now. "Try to get to the side." Kaya used her arms to paddle toward the edge of the water. Her legs were tired, but she kept kicking. The branch helped her float, but she had to work hard to move in the right direction. She felt something solid under her feet. Rocks. She could stand up. The water was not as deep here. She walked toward the side, still holding her branch in case she needed it again. Joba was walking too. The water was up to his chest, but he was moving toward her. When he got close enough, he reached out and took her hand. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Kaya looked at herself. She had small cuts on her arms and legs from hitting things in the water, but nothing was broken. "I am okay," she said. "Are you okay?" "Yes," Joba said. But she could see he was hurt too. There was blood on his forehead where something had hit him. They walked to the side of the river and sat down on the ground. They were both shaking from being cold and scared. Kaya looked around to see where they were. Nothing looked familiar. The trees were different. The rocks were different shapes. She could not see any of the places she knew from home. She could not see any of the other people from their group. "Where are we?" she asked. Joba looked around too. He had good eyes and usually knew which direction to go. But now he looked confused. "I do not know," he said. "The water brought us very far from home." Kaya felt fear growing in her chest. They were alone. They did not know where they were. They had no food and no safe place to sleep. Night would come soon. "What about the others?" she asked. "What about my mother?" "What about your brother?" Joba shook his head slowly. "I do not know. Maybe the water took them to a different place. Maybe they got away from the water before it got too bad." Kaya started to cry. Not loud crying, but quiet tears that ran down her face. She was scared and sad and did not know what to do. Joba put his arm around her. "We will find them," he said. "But first we need to stay alive. We need to find food and water and a safe place for tonight." The sun was getting lower in the sky. Soon it would be dark. That is when the dangerous animals come out to hunt. Lions and other big cats like to hunt at night. Kaya and Joba needed to find somewhere safe to hide. They stood up and started walking. Their clothes were still wet and heavy. Every step was hard work. But they had to keep moving. They had to find shelter before the sun went down completely. As they walked away from the river, Kaya looked back one more time. She hoped to see someone else from their group. But there was no one. Just the big river that had changed their lives forever. Now it was just her and Joba, alone in a strange place. They had to learn how to survive together, or they would not survive at all. The first morning in the new place was hard. Kaya woke up cold and hungry. She and Joba had found a small cave the night before. It was not a good cave, but it kept them safe from the wind and rain. Joba was already awake. He was sitting at the front of the cave, looking out at the land around them. He had his sharp stone in his hand. He always kept it close when they were in a dangerous place. "Did you sleep?" Kaya asked. "A little," Joba said. "I heard strange sounds in the night. Animals I do not know." Kaya felt scared again. At home she knew all the sounds. She knew which animals made which noises. She knew when to be afraid and when it was safe. But here everything was different. Her stomach made a loud noise. She was very hungry. They had not eaten anything since the morning before the flood. That was 2 days ago now. "We need to find food," she said. "Yes," Joba agreed, "but we must be careful. We do not know which plants here are safe to eat." At home, Kaya knew every plant that was good for food. She knew where to find roots and berries and nuts. Her mother had taught her since she was very small. But the plants here looked different. Some looked similar to plants from home, but she was not sure. They left the cave and started looking around. The sun was bright and warm. That was good. It would help dry their clothes and warm their bodies. Joba found animal tracks in the mud near a small stream. "Look," he said, pointing to the ground. "Deer came here to drink water." Kaya looked at the tracks. They did look like deer tracks, but they were bigger than the ones at home. "Are you sure they are deer?" she asked. "I think so," Joba said, "but bigger deer than we know." They followed the stream looking for more signs of animals. If they could find where animals went to eat, they might find plants that were safe. Animals were good teachers. They did not eat plants that would hurt them. Near some trees, they found places where animals had been eating grass and leaves. Small animals had made holes in the ground looking for roots. This was a good sign. Kaya dug with her digging stick in one of the holes. She found a white root about as long as her hand. It smelled good, like some of the roots from home, but she was still not sure if it was safe. "What do you think?" she asked Joba. Joba looked at the root carefully. He smelled it. Then he rubbed a very small piece on his skin to see if it would hurt. This was something his father had taught him long ago. If a plant made your skin red or hurt, it was not good to eat. The root did not hurt his skin. "I think it might be good," he said. "But we should try just a very small piece first." Kaya nodded. This was smart. She had seen people get very sick from eating bad plants. Sometimes they even died. She took a tiny bite of the root. It tasted a little bitter, but not bad. It did not burn her mouth or make her feel sick right away. "Now we wait," Joba said. "If your stomach does not hurt in a while, we can eat more." While they waited, they kept looking for other food. Joba found some berries growing on a bush. They were small and dark blue. He had never seen berries exactly like these before. They saw some birds eating the berries. The birds looked healthy and happy. This was another good sign. If birds could eat them, maybe people could too. Joba tried the same test with the berries that he had done with the root. He put a tiny amount on his skin first. Then he tasted just one small berry. By the middle of the day, neither of them felt sick from the small tastes they had taken. Kaya's stomach still felt fine. Joba did not feel sick either. "I think they are safe," Kaya said. She was so hungry that she was ready to try eating more. They ate more of the root and some of the berries. The food made them feel much better. Their stomachs stopped making loud noises. They had more energy to keep looking around. In the afternoon, they found something that made them both very excited. There were nut trees nearby. The nuts were different from the ones at home, but they were still nuts. Nuts were always good food. They had fat and protein that made people strong. The problem was that the nuts were high up in the trees. Kaya and Joba were good climbers, but these trees were very tall. Joba found a long stick. He used it to hit the branches and make nuts fall down. Kaya gathered them in her hands. They got many nuts this way. When they cracked the nuts open with stones, the nuts inside looked and smelled good. They tasted good too. These nuts were very similar to nuts they knew from home. "This is good," Kaya said, eating several nuts. "We can come back here when we need more food." As the sun started to get lower, they began walking back toward their cave. But on the way, they found something that worried them. There were large paw prints in the mud, much larger than any animal prints they knew from home. The prints had long claws. They looked like they came from a very big and dangerous animal. "What made these?" Kaya asked. She felt afraid again. Joba knelt down and looked at the prints closely. "I do not know," he said. "But it is very big, and it has very sharp claws." The prints were fresh. The animal had been here recently, maybe even today. "We need to be more careful," Joba said. "This animal might hunt people." They hurried back to their cave. When they got there, they made the opening smaller by putting rocks in front of it. They left just enough space for them to get in and out, but not enough space for a big animal to get in. That night, they took turns staying awake to watch and listen. When one slept, the other sat by the cave opening with a sharp stone, ready to fight if something dangerous came. They heard many sounds in the dark, howling sounds from animals they did not know, growling sounds, strange calls that made their skin feel cold with fear, but nothing came to their cave. When morning came, they were tired but safe. On their second day, they found more good things. There was a place where the stream formed a small pool. Fish swam in the pool. They were not big fish, but they were food. Joba was good at catching fish with his hands. It took patience and very quick movements, but he caught 3 small fish. Kaya found flat rocks they could use to cook the fish. They did not have fire yet, but they could still eat the fish. Raw fish was not as good as cooked fish, but it was still good food. The fish had protein that their bodies needed. Kaya also found a new kind of plant. It had thick, juicy leaves that held water inside them. When she bit into the leaves, sweet water came out. This was very useful. They needed to drink a lot of water, and these plants could give them water even when the stream was far away. By the 3rd day, they were starting to understand their new home better. They knew where to find different kinds of food. They knew where the water was clean and good to drink. They knew which paths were safe and which areas to avoid because of dangerous animals. They also started to create new ways to talk to each other. At home, everyone in their group knew the same words and sounds for things. But here, they were seeing new things that they did not have words for. Joba pointed to the big paw prints and made a low, growling sound. From then on, when either of them made that sound, they both knew it meant dangerous big animal. Be careful. Kaya found a way to make a sound that meant good food here. It was a soft, clicking sound with her tongue. When Joba heard that sound, he knew she had found something they could eat. They were learning to work together better too. Kaya was better at finding and testing plants. Joba was better at catching fish and understanding animal signs. They shared what they learned with each other. At night, lying in their small cave, they would point to things and teach each other new sounds for them. It was like making their own special language that only they understood. But even as they learned to find food and stay safe, they both felt sad and worried. They missed their families. They did not know if their mothers and fathers and brothers were alive or dead. They did not know if they would ever see them again. Sometimes Kaya would cry quietly when she thought about her mother. Sometimes Joba would sit very still and look sad when he thought about his brother. But they had each other. And slowly, day by day, they were learning that maybe they could survive in this strange new place. Maybe they could build a new life together, even if they never found their way back home. Many days passed. Kaya and Joba learned more about their new home every day. They found the best places to get water. They knew where different animals came to eat and drink. They had paths they followed to find food safely. But then the air started to get cold. Kaya noticed it first. When she woke up in the morning, she could see her breath like small clouds. The water in the stream had ice around the edges. The leaves on the trees were changing colors. Winter is coming, she said to Joba. At home, winter was the hardest time. Food was harder to find. The cold made everything more difficult. Some winters, people in their group got sick. Some winters, people died. But at home, they had known what to expect. They had known where to find food when other food was gone. They had known how to prepare for the cold months. Here, they did not know what winter would be like. They did not know if the plants they had found would still be there when snow came. They did not know how cold it would get. "We need to get ready," Joba said. "We need to gather food that will last." They started working very hard every day. When they found nuts, they gathered as many as they could carry. They found a dry place in their cave where they could store the nuts so they would not go bad. Kaya discovered that some of the roots they had found could be dried in the sun. Dried roots lasted much longer than fresh ones. She spent many days digging up roots and laying them out on flat rocks to dry. Joba focused on finding animals they could hunt. He had seen rabbits in the area. Rabbits were small, but their meat was good. Their fur was warm. If he could catch rabbits, they would have food and also warm fur to keep them from freezing. The problem was that Joba only had his sharp stone. At home, the men in their group hunted together. They had spears. They had traps. Here, Joba had to hunt alone with just one tool. He spent many days watching how the rabbits moved. He learned where they liked to eat. He learned the paths they used to go from their homes to places with food. Then he started making traps. He used sticks and rocks to make simple traps along the rabbit paths. It took many tries to make traps that worked. The first traps he made did not catch anything, but Joba did not give up. He kept trying different ways to make the traps. He watched how the rabbits moved when they were scared. He learned to make the traps in places where rabbits would not expect them. Finally, one morning, he found a rabbit caught in one of his traps. Kaya was so happy when he brought it back to their cave. They had not eaten meat in many days. Joba used his sharp stone to carefully take off the rabbit's fur in one piece. The fur would be very useful when the weather got colder. He also saved the bones. Bones could be used to make tools. They cooked the rabbit meat on hot rocks. It tasted wonderful after eating only plants and nuts for so long. The meat gave them energy and made them feel stronger. Kaya learned to clean the rabbit fur and make it soft. She remembered watching her mother do this at home. She scraped the fur clean and rubbed it until it was soft and flexible. As the days got shorter and colder, Joba caught more rabbits. Soon they had several rabbit furs. Kaya learned to tie them together to make larger pieces of warm covering. But they needed more than rabbit furs to stay warm. Their small cave was not warm enough for the cold that was coming. They could feel it getting colder every day. "We need to make the cave warmer," Kaya said, "or we need to find a better cave." They looked for other caves, but the ones they found were either too small or already had dangerous animals living in them. They decided to make their current cave warmer instead. Joba gathered large flat stones. He used these to make walls inside the cave that would hold in warm air. Kaya gathered dried grass and leaves to put between the stones. This would help keep cold air from coming in. They also made the opening to their cave even smaller. They could still get in and out, but less cold air could blow inside. The hardest problem was staying warm at night. Even with the rabbit furs covering them, they were still cold when they slept. Cold that went deep into their bodies and made it hard to sleep. Kaya had an idea. "We need to sleep closer together," she said. "Our bodies will make more warmth if we stay close." This was different from how they had slept before. At home, men and women usually slept in different areas. But here, they needed to do things differently to survive. At first, it felt strange to sleep so close together. But it worked. When they put their bodies close and covered themselves with rabbit furs, they were much warmer. As winter got worse, they faced new problems. Sometimes it was too cold and snowy to go outside and look for food. They had to stay in their cave for days at a time, eating only the food they had stored. Kaya learned to make the stored food last longer by eating smaller amounts. She also learned to eat parts of plants that she had never eaten before. The bark of some trees could be eaten when there was nothing else. Joba's trap stopped catching rabbits as often. The rabbits were staying in their warm homes more. They only came out when they really needed food. This made it much harder to catch them, but Joba was smart. He learned to put his traps near the places where rabbits stored their own food for winter. Even when it was very cold, rabbits still needed to eat. They would come out to get food from their storage places. The worst part of winter was not just the cold or finding food. It was being alone. At home, winter was a time when people stayed close together in warm shelters. They told stories to each other. They worked together on making tools and warm clothes. Here it was just Kaya and Joba. Sometimes days went by when they barely talked because they were so focused on staying alive. Sometimes they got angry with each other because they were stressed and scared. One very cold day they had a big fight. Joba thought Kaya was eating too much of their stored food. Kaya thought Joba was not working hard enough to catch animals. They said mean things to each other. That night they slept on opposite sides of the cave. They did not share their warmth. Both of them were cold and miserable. The next morning Kaya woke up shivering. Joba was shivering too. They looked at each other and realized how silly they had been. "I am sorry," Kaya said. "I am sorry too," Joba said. They moved close together again and shared their rabbit fur blankets. The warmth felt good, but the feeling of not being alone felt even better. From that day on, they tried harder to be kind to each other. They remembered that they only had each other. If they fought and stopped working together, they might both die. Winter seemed to last forever. There were days when the snow was so deep they could not leave their cave at all. There were days when the cold was so bad that even moving around inside the cave was hard. But slowly, very slowly, the days started to get a little longer. The sun felt a little warmer when it came out. The ice on the stream started to melt during the middle of the day. Kaya and Joba had survived their first winter in the strange land. They were thinner than they had been before winter started. They were tired and weak from not having enough food. But they were alive. More importantly, they had learned things that would help them. They knew how to store food for when times were hard. They knew how to make warm clothing from animal furs. They knew how to make their shelter warmer. They had also learned to depend on each other completely. At home, if one person had a problem, there were many other people who could help. Here, they only had each other. They had to trust each other with their lives every single day. When the first warm day of spring came, they went outside and sat in the sun. The warmth felt wonderful on their skin. They could hear birds singing. They could smell new plants starting to grow. "We did it," Kaya said. "We lived through winter." "Yes," Joba said. "And now we know we can do it again if we need to." They were not the same people who had been separated from their group by the flood. The winter had changed them. They were stronger. They were smarter about surviving. And they were closer to each other than they had ever been to anyone before. Spring was coming, and they were ready for whatever challenges it would bring. Spring brought new hope to Kaya and Joba. The snow melted away and fresh green plants started growing everywhere. They could go outside every day now to look for food. Their bodies felt stronger as they ate fresh plants again, but something was about to change their lives forever. One day, when the sky was full of dark clouds, Kaya smelled something strange in the air. It was not the smell of rain coming. It was different. Sharp and scary. "Do you smell that?" she asked Joba. Joba lifted his nose and smelled the air. "Yes," he said. "What is it?" They did not know, but the smell was getting stronger. All the birds flew away very fast. The small animals ran to their hiding places. Even the insects stopped making noise. Then they heard a loud crack like the sound of a big tree falling, but much louder. The sound came from the sky. Kaya looked up and saw something that made her heart beat fast with fear. A bright white line appeared in the dark sky. It was like a white snake made of light moving very fast across the clouds. Thunder followed the lightning. The sound was so loud that Kaya and Joba both put their hands over their ears. The ground under their feet shook from the noise. "We need to hide," Joba said. They ran toward their cave. But before they could get there, another lightning bolt came down from the sky. This one was closer, much closer. The lightning hit a tall tree near the stream where they got their water. The tree exploded with light and sound. Pieces of wood flew everywhere, but then Kaya saw something amazing. The tree was on fire, real fire. Bright orange and red flames were climbing up the tree trunk. The fire was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. At home, Kaya had seen fire before, but only small fires that people made. She had never seen fire like this. This fire was big and wild and powerful. "Look," she said to Joba, pointing at the burning tree. Joba stared at the fire. He had seen small fires too, but had never learned to make them himself. Only the oldest and wisest people in their old group knew how to make fire. It was like magic to him. The rain started falling hard. Kaya and Joba ran to their cave to stay dry. From inside the cave, they watched the burning tree through the rain. "The rain will put out the fire," Joba said sadly. But some of the fire had spread to other trees before the rain came. Even with the rain falling, some flames were still burning. The fire was fighting against the water. Kaya had an idea. It was a dangerous idea, but she thought it might work. "What if we could take some of the fire?" she said. "What if we could bring it to our cave?" Joba looked at her like she was crazy. "Fire is too dangerous. It burns everything." "But think about it," Kaya said. "Fire makes light when it is dark. Fire makes warmth when it is cold. Fire scares away dangerous animals." She was right. At home, the people who could make fire were never cold at night. They could see in the dark. Dangerous animals stayed away from them. "How would we take the fire without getting hurt?" Joba asked. Kaya thought about this. Fire burned everything it touched. But maybe they could carry fire on something that burned slowly. She looked around their cave and found a thick stick. "What if we put the fire on the end of this stick? The stick will burn, but slowly. We could carry it back here." It was still raining, but not as hard as before. Some of the trees were still burning. They would have to hurry before the rain put out all the fire. Joba was scared, but he could see that Kaya's idea might work. Fire would change their lives. It would make them safer and warmer. It might help them cook food better. "We have to be very careful," he said. They ran through the rain to the burning trees. The heat from the fire felt good on their cold, wet skin. But they could not get too close or the fire would burn them. Kaya found a branch that had fallen from one of the burning trees. One end of the branch was on fire, but the fire was small and not too dangerous. Very carefully, she picked up the other end of the branch. The burning end was far from her hands, so it did not hurt her. She had fire on a stick, just like she had imagined. "It works," she said to Joba. Now they had to get the fire back to their cave before the rain put it out. They ran as fast as they could while Kaya held the burning stick up to keep it away from the rain. When they got to their cave, Joba quickly gathered dry grass and small sticks that they had stored inside. He made a pile of this dry material near the entrance of the cave. Kaya touched the burning end of her stick to the dry grass. The grass caught fire immediately. Then the small stick started burning too. They had done it. They had brought fire to their home. But now they faced a new problem. How do you keep fire alive? At home, there were always people whose job it was to watch the fire and feed it wood so it would not die. Here it was just Kaya and Joba. "One of us always has to watch the fire," Joba said. "If we both sleep at the same time, the fire might die." This meant they would have to take turns sleeping. When one person slept, the other person would stay awake to take care of the fire. They also had to learn what to feed the fire. Small dry sticks burned fast but did not last long. Big wet wood did not burn at all. They needed to find wood that was the right size and dryness to keep the fire burning well. Joba became very good at finding the right kind of wood. He learned that wood from different trees burned differently. Some wood burned fast and bright. Other wood burned slowly and lasted longer. Kaya learned to arrange the wood in the fire so it would burn in the best way. She learned that fire needed air to stay alive. If she put too much wood on the fire too close together, the fire would die because it could not breathe. The fire changed their lives in many ways. At night, their cave was warm and bright. They could see each other's faces even when it was dark outside. They could work on making tools and preparing food even after the sun went down. The fire also kept dangerous animals away. Animals were afraid of fire because it could hurt them. At night, Kaya and Joba could hear animals moving around outside their cave, but none of them came close to the fire. But the most amazing thing about fire was how it changed their food. Joba caught a rabbit in one of his traps and they decided to try cooking it over the fire. They had eaten cooked meat before at home, but they had never cooked anything themselves. They were not sure how to do it. First, they tried holding the rabbit meat over the fire with a stick, but this was hard to do and their arms got tired. Also, some parts of the meat got burned while other parts were still raw. Then Kaya had another idea. She found a flat rock and put it near the fire until the rock got very hot. Then she put the rabbit meat on the hot rock. This worked much better. The meat cooked evenly. It smelled wonderful. When they ate it, the cooked meat tasted much better than raw meat. It was easier to chew and it made their stomachs feel good. They started cooking everything they could. They cooked fish from the stream. They cooked roots and plants. Everything tasted better when it was cooked. Cooking also made some food safer to eat. There were some plants that made them sick when they were raw, but were safe to eat after being cooked by fire. Taking care of the fire became part of their daily routine. When they woke up in the morning, the first thing they did was add wood to the fire. During the day, one of them always stayed close to the cave to watch the fire, while the other one went to look for food. At night, they took turns staying awake to keep the fire alive. This was hard at first because they were always tired, but after a while they got used to sleeping less. They also learned to read the fire like they read animal tracks or weather signs. When the fire burned bright and strong, they knew it was healthy. When the flames got small and weak, they knew they needed to add more wood quickly. Sometimes the fire almost died. This was very scary because they did not know how to make fire from nothing. They only knew how to keep fire alive once they had it. One night, Joba fell asleep when he was supposed to be watching the fire. Kaya woke up and saw that the fire was almost dead. Only a few tiny flames were left among the glowing coals. She quickly added dry grass and small sticks to the dying fire. She blew gently on the coals to give them more air. Slowly, carefully, she brought the fire back to life. From that night on, they were even more careful about watching the fire. They realized that losing their fire would be like losing part of their safety and comfort. As days passed, they got better and better at managing their fire. They learned to bank the fire at night by covering it partially with ashes so it would burn very slowly until morning. They learned to keep extra dry wood stored in the cave so they would always have fuel for the fire. The fire also gave them something new to do in the evenings. Instead of just sleeping when the sun went down, they could sit by their fire and talk. They could work on projects like making tools or preparing hides. Sometimes they just sat together and watched the flames dance. The moving fire was beautiful and peaceful to watch. It made them feel less alone in their strange new world. Fire had made them more powerful. They were warmer, safer, and better fed than before. But it had also given them a new responsibility. The fire depended on them just as much as they depended on it. They were no longer just two people trying to survive. They were two people who had mastered one of nature's most powerful forces. Fire had made them feel more human. Kaya and Joba had been living in their new home for more than a full year now. They knew the land well. They could find food in all seasons. Their fire burned bright every night. But they were about to discover that they were not alone in this place. It started with strange signs that Joba noticed near the stream. New footprints in the mud. These were not animal prints. They looked like human feet, but different from Kaya and Joba's feet. Longer and narrower. Someone else is here, Joba told Kaya when he came back from checking his rabbit traps. Kaya felt excited and scared at the same time. Excited because maybe they could find other people to live with. Scared because they did not know if these people were friendly or dangerous. How many people? She asked. I think 3 or 4, Joba said. Maybe more. The prints go toward the hills. They decided to be very careful. They made sure their fire was burning well so smoke would rise up into the sky. If the other people were friendly, the smoke might bring them to Kaya and Joba's cave. If the people were dangerous, at least Kaya and Joba would be ready. That night they heard new sounds. Human voices calling to each other from far away. The voices did not sound like the language Kaya and Joba knew, but they were definitely human voices. Should we call back to them? Kaya asked. Joba thought about this carefully. Not yet, he said. First, we need to see what kind of people they are. The next morning, Joba went out to look for the strangers. He told Kaya to stay at the cave and keep the fire burning. If he did not come back by sunset, she should hide in the back of the cave and wait. Kaya did not like being separated from Joba, but she knew he was right. One of them needed to stay safe in case something bad happened. Joba followed the footprints toward the hills. He moved very quietly and carefully, like when he was hunting rabbits. He did not want the strangers to see him before he saw them. After walking for most of the morning, Joba heard voices ahead of him. He climbed up on some rocks where he could see without being seen. There were 5 people in a small valley below him. 3 adults and 2 children. They looked different from Kaya and Joba, but they were definitely human. The strangers were taller and thinner than Joba. Their hair was lighter in color. Their skin was not as dark, but they walked upright and used tools just like Joba did. Joba watched them for a long time. They seemed to be looking for something. They were digging in the ground and searching under rocks. They were probably looking for food just like Kaya and Joba did every day. The strangers did not seem dangerous. They had children with them, which meant they were probably a family group. They took care of each other and shared the food they found, but Joba also noticed that they looked hungry and tired. Their clothes were worn and dirty. They did not seem to have a permanent home. They were probably wandering around looking for a good place to live. Joba decided to go back to Kaya and tell her what he had seen. They needed to decide together what to do about the strangers. When Joba got back to their cave, he told Kaya everything he had observed. "They have children," Kaya said. "That means they are probably not dangerous." "Yes," Joba agreed. "But they also look like they need help. They might want to take our food or our cave." This was a difficult decision. Kaya and Joba had worked very hard to build their life here. They had their fire, their stored food, their warm cave. They had everything they needed to survive, but they also missed being part of a larger group. They missed having other people to talk to and work with. The 2 children they had seen reminded them of the children in their old group back home. What if we tried to help them? Kaya suggested, what if we showed them how to find food here? Maybe they would be grateful and want to be friends. Joba was not sure this was safe. What if they try to hurt us and take everything we have? What if they don't, Kaya said. What if they are good people who just need help? We could have a bigger group again. We could have more people to help us gather food and watch for danger. They talked about this for the rest of the day. Finally, they decided to try a careful approach. They would leave some food where the strangers could find it. If the strangers were good people, they might look for whoever left the food and want to meet them. Kaya gathered some of their best nuts and dried roots. She also picked fresh berries and dug up some of the good roots they had discovered. Joba caught a fish from the stream. That evening, they carried this food to a place near where the strangers were camped. They left the food on a large flat rock where it would be easy to see. Then they hid nearby to watch what would happen. The next morning, one of the stranger children found the food. The child called to the adults, and soon all 5 strangers were standing around the rock looking at the food. Kaya and Joba could not understand the words the strangers were saying, but they could tell the strangers were surprised and excited. The strangers looked around trying to see who had left the food. One of the adult strangers, a woman who seemed to be the leader, made gestures toward the sky and trees. She seemed to be saying thank you to whoever had given them the food. This made Kaya feel good. These people had manners. They were grateful for help. The strangers ate some of the food right away, but they also saved some for later. This showed they were smart about managing food just like Kaya and Joba were. For 3 days, Kaya and Joba left food for the strangers. Each time the strangers were grateful. They started leaving things of their own on the rock. Small tools made from bone, pretty stones, plant fibers woven together. It was like they were having a conversation without words. The strangers were trying to give gifts in return for the food they received. On the 4th day, Kaya decided to take a bigger risk. Instead of just leaving food on the rock, she would stay nearby and let the strangers see her. When the stranger children came to the rock and found the food, Kaya stepped out from behind a tree. The children saw her and ran back to the adults, calling excitedly. All 5 strangers came to the rock. They saw Kaya standing about 20 steps away from them. Everyone was very still and quiet. Kaya raised her hands to show she had no weapons. She pointed to the food on the rock, then pointed to herself. She was trying to show that she was the one who had been bringing them food. The leader woman also raised her hands. She walked slowly toward Kaya, moving carefully and peacefully. When the woman got close, she pointed to the food and made a sound that seemed to mean, "Thank you." Then she pointed to herself and made other sounds. She was probably saying her name. Kaya pointed to herself and said Kaya clearly. The woman smiled and said something that sounded like Nira. They stood there looking at each other for a few moments. Both women were nervous but curious. Finally, Nira made gestures that seemed to ask if there were other people with Kaya. Kaya pointed toward the direction of her cave and held up one finger. She was trying to say there was one more person. Nira nodded and pointed to her group. She held up 5 fingers. They were starting to communicate. Over the next hour, using gestures and simple sounds, Kaya and Nira shared basic information. Nira's group had been traveling for many days looking for a safe place to live. They had been driven away from their old home by dangerous animals and hostile people. Kaya gestured for Nira to wait, then ran back to get Joba. When she returned with him, the strangers were nervous at first. Men were often more dangerous than women, but Joba was careful to show that he was peaceful. He brought gifts, a perfectly carved spear point and some of the best rabbit fur they had prepared. The strangers had gifts too. They gave Kaya and Joba a beautifully woven basket and some seeds from plants that Kaya and Joba had never seen before. As the sun started to get low, Kaya made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She gestured for the strangers to follow her and Joba back to their cave. Joba was worried about this, but he trusted Kaya. If she thought it was safe, he would go along with her idea. When they reached the cave, the strangers were amazed to see the fire burning bright inside. They had never seen people who could control fire like this. Nira and her group were so excited about the fire that they almost forgot to be careful. The children wanted to touch the flames, but their parents held them back. Kaya showed them how to sit near the fire to be warm without getting burned. She and Joba cooked food over the fire to show their guests how it was done. The strangers had never tasted cooked food before. They thought it was like magic. The cooked meat and vegetables were so much better than the raw food they were used to eating. That night, all 7 people slept near the fire. It was crowded in the cave, but everyone felt safe and warm. For the first time in over a year, Kaya and Joba were not alone, but living with strangers was not easy. The two groups had different ways of doing things. Sometimes they misunderstood each other and got frustrated. Also, there was now much more competition for food. 7 people needed much more food than 2 people. Kaya and Joba's stored food was disappearing quickly. Some of the strangers did not understand how much work it took to keep the fire alive. They expected Kaya and Joba to take care of everything while they rested. After a few days, tension was growing between the two groups. Joba was starting to think they had made a mistake by inviting the strangers to their home. But then something happened that brought everyone together. Living with 7 people in one small cave was not easy. Everyone was always bumping into each other. There was not enough room for everyone to sleep comfortably. The noise was constant, people talking, children playing, tools being made. But more importantly, the cave was not in the right place for a larger group. It was too far from the best food sources. The stream nearby was too small to provide enough fish for 7 people. The area around the cave did not have enough plants and animals to feed everyone. Kaya and Joba realized they needed to find a new place to live. Somewhere bigger and better for their growing group. "We need to explore more," Joba told everyone one morning. "We need to find a place where 7 people can live well." Nira agreed. She had been a leader for her group, and she understood the challenges they were facing. "My people know how to find good places to live," she said in the mix of gestures and words they had all learned to use together. They decided to split into 2 groups to search for a new home. Kaya, Joba, and one of Nira's children would search to the north. Nira and the rest of her group would search to the south. They would meet back at the cave in 3 days. Kaya was excited about exploring new areas. She and Joba had been living in the same small area for so long that she was curious about what else was out there. On their first day of searching, they climbed to the top of a tall hill. From there, they could see far in all directions. The land was much bigger and more varied than they had realized. To the north, there were more forests with different kinds of trees. To the east, there were grasslands where large herds of animals grazed. To the west, there were rocky areas with many caves and overhangs. "Look there." Joba pointed to a valley between 2 hills. "There is water running through it. And see how green it is? That means good plants for food." They climbed down from the hill and walked toward the valley. As they got closer, they could see that it was even better than it had looked from far away. The valley had a wide stream running through the middle of it. The stream was much bigger than the one near their old cave. It had deep pools where many fish lived. The banks of the stream were covered with fruit trees and nut trees. Near the stream, they found caves in the rocky walls of the valley. These caves were much larger than their current cave. One cave was big enough for all 7 people to live in comfortably. Another cave could be used for storing food. But the best part of the valley was the animals. Herds of deer came to the stream to drink water. There were rabbits everywhere. Birds nested in the trees. This valley could provide enough food for many people. Kaya felt her heart beat faster with excitement. This could be their new home. This could be the place where their small group could grow and thrive. They spent 2 more days exploring the valley and the areas around it. Every day they found more good things. Springs of fresh water, clay that could be used to make pots, stones that were perfect for making tools. When they returned to their cave, they found that Nira's group had also found some good places. But when Kaya and Joba described the valley, everyone agreed it sounded like the best option. "We should all go see it together," Nira said. "If it is as good as you say, we will move there." The next day, all 7 people made the journey to the valley. When Nira's group saw it, they were just as excited as Kaya and Joba had been. The children ran to the stream and played in the shallow water. The adults examined the caves and tested the soil for digging roots. Everyone could see that this was a much better place to live, but moving to a new place was a big job. They had to carry their fire to the new location without letting it die. They had to move all their stored food and tools. They had to set up their new home so it would be safe and comfortable. The most important job was moving the fire. Fire was the most valuable thing they owned, but it was also the most fragile. If the fire died during the move, they might not be able to get it back. Joba came up with a plan. He made several torches using thick sticks and dried grass. He lit all the torches from their main fire. Then different people carried different torches, so if one torch went out, there would still be others. They also carried glowing coals in a pot made from clay and animal hide. The coals burned slowly and could be used to start new fires even if all the torches went out. The move took 2 full days. They made several trips back and forth, carrying their possessions a little at a time. On the final trip, they carefully moved their fire. When they lit the first fire in their new cave, everyone cheered. They had done it. They had successfully moved to a new home without losing anything important. The new cave was wonderful. It was big enough for everyone to have their own sleeping area. The ceiling was high enough that smoke from the fire could rise up and escape through cracks in the rock. There was a natural shelf where they could store food and tools. Outside the cave, they had everything they needed. Fresh water was always available from the stream. Food was abundant and easy to find. There were good stones for making tools and good clay for making pots. But the most important thing about their new home was that it was in the right place for building a larger community. The valley could support many more people than just 7. If other travelers came by, there would be room and resources for them too. Over the following weeks, Kaya and Joba worked together to make their new home even better. They built stone walls around their sleeping areas for privacy. They created storage pits for keeping food cool and dry. They made work areas where they could prepare hides and make tools. Nira's group contributed their own skills. They were excellent at weaving baskets from plant fibers. They knew how to make clothing that was warmer and more durable than what Kaya and Joba had been wearing. They were also very good at finding and preparing plant medicines. The children in the group were helpful too. They had sharp eyes and could spot things that adults missed. They were also fearless climbers who could reach fruits and nuts that grew high in trees. As they worked together to improve their new home, the 7 people developed better ways to communicate. They created a shared language that combined words and gestures from both groups. They developed signals they could use to warn each other about danger or to coordinate their work. They also created new traditions and routines. Every morning, they would meet around the fire to plan the day's activities. Every evening, they would share the food they had gathered and tell stories about what they had seen and learned. Kaya started doing something new in the evenings. She would use pieces of charcoal from their fire to draw pictures on the smooth walls of their cave. She drew pictures of the animals they hunted. She drew pictures of the plants they gathered for food. She drew pictures of important events that had happened to their group. At first, the others did not understand why she was making these marks on the cave walls. But gradually they realized that the pictures helped them remember things. When new people joined their group, the pictures could be used to teach them about the local plants and animals. Joba started making more complex tools than he had ever made before. With better stones available in their new location, he could make sharper knives and more effective spear points. He also experimented with different ways of hafting stone blades onto wooden handles. The tools that Joba made were so good that other people started asking him to make tools for them too. He became known as the best toolmaker in their group. Nira organized the group's food gathering activities. She knew which people were best at finding different types of food. She made sure that they always had enough food stored for times when weather or other problems made it hard to gather fresh food. Under Nira's leadership, their food storage became more sophisticated. They learned to dry meat so it would last longer. They learned to store nuts and seeds in ways that kept insects and rodents away. They learned to preserve fruits by drying them in the sun. As the seasons passed, their new home became more and more comfortable and efficient. They had created something that was more than just a place to survive. They had created a place where people could thrive and grow, but perhaps the most important thing they had created was a sense of community. They were no longer just individuals trying to survive on their own. They were a group of people who worked together, shared resources, and took care of each other. When winter came to their new valley, they were ready for it. Their cave was warm and spacious. Their food stores were abundant. Their fire burned bright every night. And for the first time since the flood that had separated them from their original families, Kaya and Joba felt like they were truly home. They had not just found a place to live. They had created a place where other people could come and join them. They had laid the foundation for something bigger than themselves, a community that could last for generations. As they sat by their fire on cold winter nights, surrounded by their adopted family, Kaya and Joba knew that they had accomplished something remarkable. They had turned their survival into something much greater. They had turned their love into the beginning of a new kind of human community. Spring came again to the valley where Kaya, Joba, and their new family had made their home. The flowers bloomed early that year, and the trees grew heavy with fruit. It seemed like their valley was becoming more abundant every season. One morning, while Kaya was gathering berries near the stream, she heard a strange sound. It was like crying, but not quite human. She followed the sound carefully, moving slowly through the bushes. Behind a fallen log, she found something that broke her heart. It was a young person, maybe 12 or 13 years old. The child was alone, thin and frightened. Their clothes were torn and dirty. They had cuts and bruises on their arms and legs. Kaya approached very slowly, making soft, gentle sounds to show she was not dangerous. The child looked up at her with big, scared eyes. "It's okay," Kaya said softly, using the universal sounds of comfort that all humans seem to understand. "You are safe now." The child did not seem to understand her words, but they could hear the kindness in her voice. They stopped crying and watched Kaya carefully. Kaya sat down a few steps away from the child. She took some berries from her gathering basket and placed them on the ground between them. Then she ate one berry herself to show they were safe. The child was obviously very hungry. After watching Kaya eat, they crawled forward and took one of the berries. Then another. Soon they were eating the berries eagerly. While the child ate, Kaya studied them. This young person looked different from anyone in their group. Their hair was curlier and darker. Their skin had a different tone. They were probably from a group that lived far away, but most importantly, this child was alone. That was very unusual. Young people never traveled by themselves. Something bad must have happened to their family or group. When the child had eaten all the berries, Kaya stood up slowly and gestured for them to follow her. The child hesitated at first, but hunger and loneliness made the decision easier. They got up and followed Kaya back toward the cave. When Kaya arrived at their home with the strange child, everyone gathered around to see what was happening. The child became frightened again when they saw so many people and tried to hide behind Kaya. Joba approached carefully. He had experience with frightened animals, and he knew how to move in ways that did not seem threatening. He knelt down and offered the child some water in a gourd cup. Nira brought some cooked meat and vegetables. The smell of the cooked food made the child's eyes grow wide. They had probably never eaten cooked food before. The child ate like they had not had a good meal in many days. Everyone watched sadly, knowing that this young person had been through something terrible. That night, they made a sleeping place for the child near the fire. The child curled up in the warm furs they provided and slept deeply for the first time in probably weeks. Over the next few days, the adults in the group tried to learn the child's story. Using pictures drawn in the dirt and simple gestures, they slowly began to understand what had happened. The child's name sounded like Tam when they said it. Tam had been part of a larger group that was attacked by hostile people. In the confusion and violence, Tam had become separated from their family. They had been wandering alone for many days. eating whatever they could find and hiding from dangerous animals. Tam did not know if their family was alive or dead. They did not know how to get back to their homeland. They were completely lost and alone in the world. Kaya's heart ached for this young person. She remembered how scared and lost she had felt when the flood separated her from her family, but at least she had been with Choba. Tam had been facing the wilderness completely alone. Group held a meeting to discuss what they should do about Tam. Some people thought they should help Tam find their original family. Others thought that would be too dangerous. They did not know where Tam's people were, and the hostile people who had attacked them might still be in the area. Joba had a different idea. Why don't we ask Tam what they want to do? He suggested. Maybe they want to stay with us. This was a new thought. In their old lives, children belonged to their birth families. But here in the wilderness, survival was more important than old traditions. Using their mix of words and gestures, they asked Tam what they wanted. Tam looked around at all the faces surrounding them. These people had been kind and generous. They had shared their food and fire. They had kept Tam safe. Tam pointed to the group and then to themselves. They wanted to stay. This decision changed everyone's lives. Suddenly, Kaya and Joba were not just members of their small community. They were teachers. They needed to help Tam learn all the skills necessary to survive and thrive in their valley. Teaching Tam was different from anything they had done before. Tam was old enough to understand complex ideas, but young enough to learn new ways of doing things quickly. Kaya taught Tam about plants. She showed them how to identify which plants were safe to eat and which ones were dangerous. She taught them how to prepare different plants to make them taste better or last longer. Tam was a quick learner when it came to plants. They had good eyes for spotting edible foods, and they seemed to have a natural understanding of how plants grew and changed with the seasons. Joba taught Tam about animals and hunting. He showed them how to read animal tracks and understand animal behavior. He taught them how to set traps and how to use tools for hunting and fishing. Tam was also good at learning about animals. They moved quietly and patiently, which were important skills for hunting. They learned to make their own simple tools and to maintain and repair them. But the most important things Tam learned were about fire and community life. Tam had never lived with people who could control fire. They were amazed by everything fire could do. Cooking food, providing warmth, giving light, scaring away dangerous animals. Kaya and Joba taught Tam how to maintain a fire, how to bank it at night, and how to start new fires from old ones. They taught them which wood burned best and how to arrange wood so the fire would burn efficiently. They also taught Tam about working as part of a group. In Tam's original family, each person had probably had a specific role based on their age and gender. But in this new community, everyone did whatever work needed to be done. Tam learned to gather food with the women, hunt with the men, help with tool making, and assist with food preparation. They became skilled at many different tasks instead of specializing in just one area. As Tam learned these skills, something wonderful happened. The process of teaching made Kaya and Joba realize how much knowledge they had gained during their years of survival. When they first arrived in this place, they had known almost nothing about living independently. Now they could identify dozens of edible plants, track and hunt various animals, control fire, make sophisticated tools, preserve food for long periods, and create comfortable shelter. They had become experts at survival, but they had gained this knowledge so gradually that they had not realized how much they had learned. Teaching Tam also brought the whole group closer together. Everyone participated in helping the young person learn different skills. Neera taught Tam about weaving and making clothing. The other adults taught Tam about their own specialties. Even the children in their group helped teach Tam. They showed Tam the best places to find certain plants and the safest paths through the valley. They taught Tam games and songs that helped make the long winter nights more enjoyable. As Tam became more skilled and confident, they started contributing their own knowledge to the group. Tam had come from a different region and knew about plants and animals that were new to everyone else. Tam showed them a new way to weave baskets that made them stronger and more waterproof. Tam knew about a plant that could be used to make rope that was stronger than anything they had used before. Most importantly, Tam brought new stories and ideas to their group. During the long evenings by the fire, Tam would tell stories about their original homeland. These stories helped everyone understand that there were many different ways that people could live. The addition of Tam to their group also changed how they thought about their future. Before, they had been focused mainly on their own survival. Now they started thinking about what kind of community they wanted to build for the long term. They realized that their knowledge and skills were valuable, not just for their own survival, but for helping other people who might need help in the future. They had created something worth sharing. Kaya started making more detailed pictures on the cave walls. She drew pictures that showed how to identify safe plants, how to make tools, how to prepare different foods, and how to maintain fire. These pictures could teach future people even if no one was there to explain them. Joba started making extra tools, more than their group needed. He stored these tools carefully so they would be ready if other people joined their community. The group also started planning for the possibility of finding and helping other lost or displaced people. They identified areas in their valley that could support additional families. They located caves and overhangs that could serve as homes for newcomers. By the end of that year, Tam had become a full member of their community. They were skilled at all the essential survival tasks. They contributed their own ideas and energy to the group's work. They had grown from a frightened, lost child into a confident young adult. But more than that, the experience of teaching and integrating. Many seasons had passed since Kaya and Joba first came to their valley. Their hair was now touched with gray. Their faces showed lines from years of squinting into the sun and smiling at their growing family. Their hands were rough and strong from years of hard work. What had started as a desperate fight for survival had become something beautiful. Their small group of 7 people had grown into a community of 15. More lost travelers had found their way to the valley over the years. Each new person brought different skills and knowledge. There was Kesh, an old man who knew more about the stars than anyone else. He could tell what season was coming by watching how the stars moved across the sky. There were Mira and John, a young couple who had been cast out from their original group but had proven to be excellent hunters. There was little Bryn, an orphaned child who had the best eyes for spotting things that others missed. Each new person who joined their community went through the same process that Tam had experienced years ago. They were welcomed, fed, and taught. They learned about fire and tools and food storage. They learned the shared language that the community had developed. Most importantly, they learned that they were now part of something bigger than themselves. Kaya had become the keeper of knowledge. The pictures she drew on the cave walls had grown into something like a library. There were pictures showing every edible plant in their area, with details about when to harvest them and how to prepare them. There were pictures showing animal tracks and hunting techniques. There were pictures showing how to make different tools and how to build shelters. But Kaya's pictures had also become something more than just practical information. She had started drawing pictures that told the story of their community. There were pictures showing the great flood that had brought her and Joba to this place. Pictures showing their first winter together. Pictures showing the lightning that gave them fire. Pictures showing each new person who had joined their group. These story pictures were important because they helped everyone understand that they were part of something that would continue beyond their own lives. Children who had been born in the valley would grow up knowing the history of their community. They would understand how much struggle and cooperation had gone into creating their safe, abundant home. Joba had become the master of tools and fire. His stone knives were so sharp and well-made that people from other regions had heard about them. Traders sometimes came to their valley specifically to trade for Joba's tools. But more than making tools, Joba had become a teacher of toolmaking. He had trained several of the younger people in the community to make their own tools. Each student learned to make tools that were good for their own hands and their own tasks. Joba had also developed new techniques for managing fire. He had created a system where fire was kept burning in several different locations around their settlement. This meant that if one fire accidentally went out, there would always be others to restart it from. He had also learned to make special long-burning fires that could stay alive for many days without attention. The community that Kaya and Joba had helped create was now completely self-sufficient. They could make everything they needed to survive and thrive. They could feed, clothe, and shelter 15 people through even the harshest winters. They had enough stored food to last through bad years when weather or other problems made it hard to gather fresh food. But their community was more than just self-sufficient. It was generous. When other travelers came through their valley, even if those travelers could not stay permanently, Kaya and Joba's people always shared food and fire. They always offered help and advice. Word of their community had spread among the scattered human groups in the region. People spoke of a valley where travelers were always welcome, where the fire never died, where people knew secrets about plants and tools and hunting that they were willing to share. Some people even made special trips to their valley just to learn these secrets. Young people from other communities would spend a season living with Kaya and Joba's group, learning skills they could take back to their own families. This exchange of knowledge had made their community even stronger. Every visiting teacher brought new information about plants, animals, tools, or techniques. The community's store of knowledge kept growing. On quiet evenings, when all the daily work was done and everyone was gathered around the fire, Kaya and Joba would sometimes look at each other and marvel at what they had built together. They remembered those first terrifying days after the flood, when they were alone and lost and frightened. They remembered the struggle to find food, the desperate search for shelter, the constant fear of dangerous animals. Now they were surrounded by family, not the family they had been born into, but the family they had chosen and created. Now they lived in abundance with plenty of food, warm shelter, and safety from danger. But the most amazing thing was not what they had accomplished for themselves. It was what they had accomplished for others. Every person in their community was alive because Kaya and Joba had been willing to share what they had learned. Every child in their community would grow up with knowledge and skills that most people in the world did not have. Tam, the lost child they had found years ago, was now a strong young adult with a family of their own. Tam's children were learning to speak the community's shared language as their first language. They were growing up thinking that fire and cooked food and warm caves were normal parts of life. These children would never know the fear and hardship that their grandparents had faced. They would grow up in safety and abundance, surrounded by people who cared for them and taught them everything they needed to know. But Kaya and Joba also made sure that the children learned about the struggles that had created their comfortable life. The story pictures on the cave walls reminded everyone that their safety and abundance had not come easily. The children learned that their community existed because people had been willing to work hard, share resources, and help strangers. They learned that maintaining their way of life required constant effort and cooperation. As Kaya and Joba grew older, they spent more time teaching and less time doing the physical work of survival. But their teaching was just as important as hunting or gathering food. They were passing on not just knowledge but values. They taught that survival was not just about staying alive as an individual. Real survival meant creating something that could last beyond your own lifetime. It meant building a community where everyone could thrive. They taught that strength came from cooperation, not from fighting. The strongest communities were the ones where everyone shared their skills and knowledge freely. They taught that wisdom came from being willing to learn from anyone, even from strangers, even from children, even from people who seemed very different from yourself. On the walls of their cave, alongside all the pictures of plants and animals and tools, Kaya had drawn one special picture. It showed two people standing together facing a vast wilderness. Around them, the picture showed how their love and cooperation had grown into a thriving community with many people. This picture reminded everyone that great things could grow from small beginnings. Two people who refused to give up, who cared for each other and were willing to help others, could create something that would benefit many people for generations. As winter settled over their valley once again, Kaya and Joba sat by their fire surrounded by their large, happy family. The flames danced and flickered just as they had on that first night, when lightning had given them the gift of fire. But now the fire meant so much more than it had then. Then, it had simply meant the difference between life and death. Now it represented the heart of their community. It was the light that gathered everyone together. It was the warmth that made their home welcoming to newcomers. It was the tool that let them cook the food they shared with travelers and guests. The fire had been their first step toward building something bigger than themselves. From that one fire sparked by lightning and tended by their careful hands, had grown a community that was now home to 15 people, and had helped many more. Looking into the flames, Kaya and Joba could see their future. They could see their community continuing to grow and thrive. They could see their knowledge and values being passed down to new generations. They could see travelers from far away, continuing to come to their valley seeking help and learning. They had transformed their love story into something much bigger, a story of human cooperation and community building that would inspire people for generations to come. Their quest through the wilderness had ended not in simply surviving, but in creating a legacy of hope, knowledge, and community that would outlast their own lives. They had shown that two people working together with love and determination could change the world around them. In the dancing flames of their eternal fire, they could see the faces of all the people they had helped and all the people who would be helped in the future because of what they had built together. Their story had become larger than just their own survival. It had become a story about what humans could accomplish when they chose cooperation over competition, generosity over selfishness, and hope over despair.